4 wins in 5 games, now in a 4-way tie for second place in the NHL's East Division after beating the Islanders 3-2. Another comeback win, but a regulation win, and a crucial one there, at least at this point of the season. Kris Letang scores 2 goals. Yes, Kris Letang is heard from in the offensive zone. Sidney Crosby gets 2 assists in his big milestone night. And Mike Matheson, the redemption tour perhaps continuing on here. He gets a tying goal off a sweet assist from Teddy Bluger just past the midway point of the third period, helping the Penguins jump right back into it and steal one. Tristan Jarry made about, 30 saves tonight? It doesn't really tell the story. He was outstanding, possibly the number 1 star, even with all those superlatives and individual standpoints that I just mentioned. I'm Matt Gajtka. This is Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live, streaming for you on YouTube, on Facebook for Pittsburgh Hockey Now, and also on Twitter. Hunter Hodies of Locked On Penguins and Pittsburgh Hockey Now is my guest for the first time this season. I was just the guest on Locked On Penguins yesterday. We talked about a lot of subjects, and, well, one game can change a lot of things, Hunter, and I think primarily you got to go with Kris Letang as the big change. We were talking just last night, you and I, about how quiet he's been in the offensive zone. Well, he decides to shoot the puck, a one-timer on the power play to put the Pens ahead in the second, and then changing the angle niftily and firing a dart, a wrister past Semyon Varlamov to put the Penguins ahead for good. I think we can hope that this is the sign of things to come, but how did you see Letang's night? Besides just the goals, how did you see him play overall?
Yeah, I think this was his best game of the season, to be honest with you. Just in the defensive zone, wasn't making mistakes that we've seen him make. Was jumping into the play. Just always remember those plays against the Capitals from last week where he gave up a scoring chance within like a minute of the game, and it was just like, well, same as it ever was with him. And then, but just tonight, just much more fluid. Best game of the season. You hit it best with his 2 goals, especially. Had a gorgeous slap shot. Shooting on the power play works, Matt. Who knew? And then just the way to find that angle on that third goal when it looked like it was potentially going to go to overtime. You can't teach that stuff. That's his first 2 goals of the season. It took until the 16th game for him to finally score his first goal. So I don't think we've ever said that about Kris Letang. But, if this is the start of something much better for Letang, this improves the Penguins' odds so much more for the rest of the season.
A reminder, you can chime in. You can say your piece here, as Walt Flanagan already has on our YouTube feed. Like I said, we're streaming on all sorts of channels. You can tweet at us. Hunter and I are right there available for you, as well as being on Facebook, and we'll try to get you some airtime here tonight as time permits. Well, the story coming in, Hunter, and arguably, as I said, 2 assists for Sid, was Crosby in his 1,000th game, the first Penguin to reach that milestone. Feels weird to say. I had to double-check and triple-check when I first heard that to see how close Mario Lemieux had gotten to 1,000 games, about 80 so away from it. And we're looking like it's going to be Evgeny Malkin approaching that next season with a shortened season. This time around, no chance for him to get to 1,000 this spring. But Sid, the first one to that milestone in team history, gets the lovely silver engraved stick before the game. And the pregame video, you marvel at the number of highlights that he's produced over the years. And also, I thought it was really fitting. End of the game, Hunter, he bodies up against Jordan Eberle, a very nifty forward, a guy who's tough to defend against. He rips the puck away from him, makes a perfect exit pass, helps the Penguins defend that lead. So, yeah, it is about the flash and the dash and the skill and the amazing athleticism that Crosby shows, the hand-eye coordination. Of course, every night it seems like he gives you something to gawk at, but it's also the details. And I think when I look back on his career at the end of it, when I look back on it right now, I'll think about those details that he gets right so often, maybe more often than any other player I've ever seen. How have you taken in his career? Because you're younger than me. You've been watching him since you were quite young. So he's been basically there ever since you've been a follower of the Penguins. So what does the Sidney Crosby era mean to you?
Well, it means everything. Started following the team, a little bit before when he got here, but, I was only like 6 or 7 years old when he made his debut. I was basically 8. So he's been here 16 years of my life. And, he is, for like a lot of people my age, it is basically the golden era of Penguins hockey. It's just, this is stuff that you're going to tell your kids one day, your grandkids, about what you watch. I mean, just as, my mom and my family told me about how they watched Mario in their prime. I didn't get to see it. I wasn't born yet. But, it's almost the same thing. And, you mentioned that play with Eberle at the end of the game. That's just the stuff that he'll do, to win games. You saw how great defensively he was there. Eberle, big Penguin killer throughout his career. I think he had his 11th goal in 24 games overall tonight against Pittsburgh. Sid made sure he wasn't getting his 12th in 24. That's for sure. But that was just a great play along the boards, and then they were able to just clear the puck out. And I was telling you before we got on, that was probably the best minute of the Penguins defending a 1-goal lead for the final minute since, I think, 2017. But just for Sid, man, I mean, so many great goals over the years, so many great moments. I did a thread this morning on my Twitter, just like reliving some of those moments that he had. I mean, my favorite one personally is Jason Spezza one from 2010 in the playoffs, where he just kind of made him cry behind the net with how he was just going back and forth. And then Letang obviously beats Brian Elliott. But just, I think I saw a take on Twitter, during the game. I'm not really sure. I can't remember who had it, but, Crosby's going to go down as like the most accomplished player in franchise history with everything he's done. But like the best player that's ever played was Mario. And I think, if you look at that take, it's pretty fair, but just with Sid, with everything he did, with everything he's done, he's going to continue to do. This was his night. He knew he was going to do something special. And it's just been a joy to watch him these last 16 years.
We'll talk more about Sid here at the end of the show. I have some more observations, including that pregame where he got a little teary-eyed. I've never seen Sid that emotional in that way, at least. We've seen him celebrate cups, of course, and championships and big wins, but nothing quite like that. So I thought that was interesting. I want to mine that for some more a little bit later on in the program. But Hunter, let's not gloss over the fact that the Penguins did not play well for most of this game, and we've been waiting for a game where the goalie keeps the Penguins in it and gives them a chance to win. Well, we saw that come through in spades tonight. Tristan Jarry, like I said, probably your number one star. If it weren't for Kris Letang scoring twice, we got to give him at least number two, just based on what he did this evening. The Islanders ended up with 13 high-danger scoring chances in this game and just scored the 2 goals. Honestly, the Eberle goal to open the scoring for the Islanders late in the second period, a complete defensive breakdown for the Penguins. P.O. Joseph, Mike Matheson backing way off. No one to be found in the middle of the ice with Malkin not being in his spot where he needed to be. And the second goal is shot through a screen after Malkin cheated up ice and left the Penguins high and dry in their own zone. I don't think Jarry ever saw that shot from Brock Nelson out near the line. So the 2 goals that beat him, you have to say, well, not really his fault at all. But we've said that a lot about Jarry this season, and he's still found a way to allow 3 and 4 and 5 and lose games, or at least not allow the Penguins to win in regulation. Tonight, he did everything and more. It looks confident. The puck is finding him suddenly, and I don't know if it's anything more than a little bit better positioning, maybe a little more confidence, holding his ground better in certain spots. And we saw some block shots in front of him late. But for me, defensively, I know you mentioned the last minute, the Penguins looked like a very committed defensive team. But first 2 periods, it could have been well out of the barn for the Pens. And instead, you see Jarry come through. So do you feel like he has turned a corner? Because this is a couple of really solid games in a row. You could say even 3 or 4 really good games in a row for him.
Yeah, I think he's not fully turned the corner yet. It is only 4 games, but I think as of right now, it's definitely pretty damn good, I would say. I mean, I think for the last 4 games, Matt, he's over .930 save percentage now. I mean, you're right. I mean, they were outshot, I think, in that first period, 16-4. They were on pace to get outshot 48-12 overall for the game. That's pretty damn bad if you ask me. But he was there. His rebound control, I thought, was great. I definitely have a lot more confidence than he had earlier in the season. He's square up shooters. I mean, yeah, 13 high danger chances, and he basically saved almost all of them. So he's definitely going to be the guy moving forward, and rightfully so. You gave him that 3-year contract earlier in the offseason, and he's locked in right now. And I said it on my Twitter after the game, if he keeps playing like this and he keeps giving them 920, 930 goaltending for the rest of the season, hopefully this just changes the outlook of the team completely. He is the biggest reason why they won tonight. He flat out stole this game for Pittsburgh. Well, outside of Kris Letang, but I think he flat out stole it.
How about Mike Matheson? And I tweeted early in the game, I love the move he made to get to the net when the Penguins had very little going. It was basically Crosby with a couple of chances in the first and that Matheson solo journey to the net that Varlamov denied. But I love his style because the Penguins don't have a lot of defensemen like that who are willing to really set sail and take things under their own power. And we saw on his game-tying goal, he carried it out into the neutral zone, chipped it ahead to Bluger, kept going right to the net. Now, sometimes that puck's going to go the other way, and maybe the Penguins get burned for it. And like I said, Matheson was on the ice and was late to cover on the Eberle goal. But at the same time, I feel like the Penguins need that level of spice that Matheson can bring to the ice. And we saw that tonight, mostly on the positive side. And for him, I wonder if he's their best offensive defenseman now. Even on a night when Kris Letang scores a couple of goals, it seems like it's Matheson who is making those little plays to keep pucks alive in the O zone. So you and I discussed on your podcast, a little cheap plug there yesterday, that could have been a shrewd move from Rutherford. We'll see how this one pans out. But as of right now, I love what Mike Matheson is doing. I think he's given this team a jolt. And like I mentioned, first period, maybe that puck goes in for him next time, and the Penguins even carry a lead when they really shouldn't have. So some individual efforts tonight that we'll definitely remember, and I don't want Mike Matheson to be forgotten, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, just a week ago, I think most of Penguins Twitter was ready to send him to the moon or something just because of how bad he was before he got injured. But ever since that injury, he's been one of our top three best defensemen in the Hornquist trade. Looking a bit better right now. You know, I'm still not as big of a fan of it for obvious reasons, just because he has 8 goals already this year. But just like his play in the offensive zone, his play in the defensive zone, he's not getting caught just bad pinches. I've noticed that earlier in the season. I know tonight that goal with P.O. Joseph, I think it was the Eberle goal. I originally just killed P.O. Joseph on Twitter just because of how out of position he looked. Then, I went back and watched it, and it was like, oh, Matheson, I didn't really know what he was doing on that play. But he more than redeemed himself, jumped into the rush with that second goal. And just that was a wicked shot. And, just a week ago, Matt, when P.O. Joseph was lighting Penguins Twitter and he was playing pretty good, I was like, you know what? I think he's safe on the lineup. I think Matheson's going to be the odd man out. How times have changed in a week. That's how fast this can change with the Penguins. Because as of right now, I'm keeping Mike Matheson in, and I'm honestly scratching P.O. Joseph from the lineup just because his level of play is not where it was earlier in the season. But I also think it's because he's eating up a lot more minutes. And I think, just for his first season, he should be playing top pairing minutes. But Matheson, Marino, that's a strong second pairing. I really like. I think they bring the best in each other. I think Marino looks more composed and calm next to someone like Mike Matheson. He wasn't looking as calm. I think he was with Letang earlier in the year, Pedersen even, and that was a strong pairing I remember with Pedersen, Marino. But just with Matheson there, it just brings out the best in Marino, and I think, and he's been fun to watch. He plays like a forward sometimes. I know some people on Penguins Twitter think he is a forward. But he's definitely given this team a jolt. I would agree with you.
In this modern era, I don't think we need to wed ourselves to positions as much as we used to. I would love to see the reinvention of the rover like we used to see back when NHL hockey was 6 skaters on 6, way back 100 years ago. You used to have 3 forwards, 2 defensemen, and a rover. And that's a position that I think was made for a guy like Mike Matheson. Perhaps it's a position that was made for a guy like Kris Letang over the course of his career. But call it total hockey. There was a theory in soccer called total football back in the 80s with the Dutch team. And really, that's how soccer has evolved. It's not so much wedded to positions. And, well, you're a forward, you stay here. You're a winger, you stay here. That game has gotten a lot more fluid. I think we're getting there with hockey, too, where if a forward drops back and a D goes up, it's no big deal. It's just all part of the game. It's how you have to stay unpredictable. And I think we're seeing that more and more in the NHL, at the NHL level especially. And I think that's why it feels like at times offenses are a little ahead of defenses. You're seeing scoring up this year, especially involving teams from Canada for some reason. But overall, it's felt like offenses have started to take a step forward. And we'll see if defenses can answer back. But unpredictability is key for me on the attack. And when you have a player like Mike Matheson, certainly it's hard for his teammates to know where he's going to be, let alone the opponents. Penguins win at 3-2 over the Islanders. Back-to-back wins over New York, giving the Isles 0 points. the Penguins are now tied for second place in the East Division with the Flyers and the Capitals and the Isles. And the Penguins actually have one more victory. So as of right now, they hold that tie break. They're the second team behind the Bruins if the season ended today, which we all know it doesn't. It did for a long time in this game, though, Hunter, feel like another step back for the Penguins. They beat the Capitals very soundly, played a great game on Sunday, then a stinker on Tuesday, didn't show many signs of life, especially at even strength. Great game against the Isles on Thursday, back here on Saturday, and it was looking like the Isles were going to skate away with it, and there wasn't much to show. Malkin was out with an injury for a short period of time, but honestly, at times this year, you wouldn't be able to tell if he was out or if he was in. So Mike Sullivan actually changed the lines up quite a bit, and we saw Tanev up with Guentzel and Crosby. We saw Kasperi Kapanen bump down to the fourth line. Only got one shift in the third period on the fourth line, according to the shift chart. So I think Sully's starting to tell some guys not so quietly here through ice time and positioning on the chart that this up and down stuff isn't gonna cut it anymore. What did you observe there? Did you see anything, any combinations that Sully stumbled upon that might be a winner moving forward?
I mean, I wanted to go back and see what Kapanen did that made Sullivan put him down on the fourth line, just because I didn't notice in real time, but it was like that just came out of nowhere. I'm gonna have to go back and just see the last time when he took that shift to the Crosby line to see what he did that made Sullivan just say, okay, no, you're off that. Like, was it a turnover? Was it a secret pass? I'm not really sure. But, you know, I like Tanev up there, preferably. I like him with Aston Reese and Bluger. That's their glue line. It's one of the best fourth lines in hockey if they can go out and get maybe a winger or two to play with Jared McCann once he comes back. But, you know, I love the Zucker with Malkin and with Ryan Rust, of course. That line was awesome last year. It was good to start the year. I know Malkin was struggling, but Rust was still playing well. Zucker has come out of his shell a bit since just the really strong start that he had, and then, of course, kind of faded away, but has a goal in the last game. I thought that line was good. I still would rather have Kapanen up on the first line. He doesn't belong down there with Drew O'Connor and Sam Lafferty. Speaking of Sam Lafferty, this was probably his best game of the season tonight. I know we were talking on the podcast last night about how he should have a lot more to give. He's kind of like the training camp hero among some people that talk about him that go to training camp and stuff, but had some good scoring chances. I think he hit a post or two early on in the game, if I'm not mistaken. Mark Jankowski even had a couple good chances early in the game. That was the most I've noticed him at since the opening two games in Philadelphia. So it's good when Jankowski at least is showing a little bit of signs of life, or just that he's showing that he's still on the team at least. Drew O'Connor, you know, I'm not going to make a lot of judgments on him if this is still his opening season, but I think they'll probably bump Kapanen up for the next game. But yeah, I do want to see what exactly it was. Like just basically Sullivan said, hey, you're only going to have one basically in the third period.
Yeah, we'll have to pick apart the tape, even if there wasn't something in particular. A pretty quiet game for Kasperi Kapanen, and he did play decently well with Sid in the game against the Isles on Thursday. I guess not to Sullivan's liking here tonight. Let's go to some YouTube comments. We have quite a few. And we'll start with Walt Flanagan, our old friend, who usually has something to say. He said, I can't honestly find too much to grouse about. Oh, my goodness. What have the Penguins done here? Maybe we'd like to see scoring from forwards, ? But whatever, a good win. Stars playing well, power play scoring. Yes, let's not forget that Letang goal was a power play goal, too. So they have a couple now in their past 6 or 7 games. A bonanza, and Jarry making some key saves. Henry F. says, Letang and Matheson with a 1-2 punch on the first and second D pairs. Yeah, if there is that setup going forward here with Letang and maybe Dumoulin coming back, I'm sure he'll be reunited with Kris on the top pairing once he's up to health. And then you have Mike Matheson and John Marino. I really like the top 2 pairs, and that makes the third pair with Marcus Pettersson and whoever else also quite strong. So again, the Penguins have a surplus on D, and well, I've discussed it in the past that I would like to see them trade from that surplus, but neither here nor there right now. I want to get to a few more comments. More from Henry. Matheson fitting well with the Penguins system. Keep building on these performances, and that contract goes from a burden to a steal. And I was curious about the contract earlier today, and looking it up, it is funny to look at the cap-friendly page for the Penguins and see that the two guys signed for the longest after this season on the Penguins are Mike Matheson and John Marino. Matheson's contract, $4.875 million per year through the 2025-26 season. Even Sidney Crosby himself, the man of the hour tonight, is only signed through the 2024-25 season at 8.7 per. And then John Marino at 4.4 per for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more years after this one. So, Marino's got a lot of runway ahead of him, but so does Mike Matheson. Maybe you're more of a cynical variety of fan, and you say, well, yeah, we want Matheson to score and look good, so then we can flip him. But I think he can be a contributor to this team, and I will continue to bang the drum for him. A couple more on YouTube. Also want to thank Mike Osti. He's manning the controls back at Pittsburgh Sports Live headquarters, putting a quote from Kris Letang on Sid's milestone night. Quote, he's given so much to all his teammates throughout the years. To get that win for him is huge. It's special. And how about Thomas Nevitt? Probably the best late-game defensive performance in some time. So Thomas agrees with you, Hunter. Jarry, brilliant tonight. I won't blame him for either of the goals, despite the failed poke check on goal 1. Yeah, that was desperate times. Call for desperate measures type of a situation for Jarry. It was a one-on-one right down the slot, him against Jordan Eberle. And I think Eberle is going to beat most goalies in that situation. Okay, let's go back to the pregame there, Hunter. I don't know how much of it you saw, but Sid, like I said, getting emotional, tearing up, his teammates playfully mocking him in the pregame skate, all pausing to tighten their skates, undo their laces at the 5-minute mark in the pregame skate. Sid got a kick out of that and got him mic'd up. I like to see that humanity come out from Crosby, because I call him a hockey robot endearingly. It's a good term. Because he seems to do everything right 95% of the time at least. But I feel that we're starting to see some of the cracks in that veneer. We're starting to see more of the human side of Sidney Crosby. For me, that can only be a good thing, because we saw all the frailties, for lack of a better term, of Mario Lemieux here in town with his body failing him. And I think it endeared him more. I know it endeared him more to me, but also to the Pittsburgh fan base. I think if Crosby does one thing in his so-called old age of his playing years that he hasn't done so far that could actually benefit him in that category, it's to show a little more of that human side. So how much did that surprise you, to see him actually get emotional before a game when you think he'd be totally locked in?
Yeah, a lot of those players nearly bottom of tiers. I know that Chino won, especially just with how long he's been there. Kris Letang, of course. It was awesome to see. He's not a robot 24/7. I think is my big takeaway. Everyone always likes to say he gives like the robotic answers in like the press conferences and the interviews after the game. And yeah, hockey players are kind of built that way. I mean, people say that about Connor McDavid too, with how he answers questions. But it was great to see him just cheer up. You saw his mom and dad up there. His sister were making him pretty emotional. I mean, it's once in a blue moon when even his girlfriend comes out onto the ice, who we haven't seen in honestly forever, to be honest. So, it's a special night when that happens. But yeah, I thought that overall they did an excellent job with that ceremony. All like just the congratulations that he got. I think the best one that I saw, his childhood idol Steve Yzerman gave him a nice message. And I remember he's always said that that's his favorite player that he watched growing up. I mean, you saw Alex Ovechkin give him a message during a game. Just so many people just really brought him to tears. It's just I really enjoyed seeing him just soak in the moment, because he's going to have plenty more of those coming by the time his career is over, and after his career when his jersey eventually goes up into the rafters.
Yeah, we know that day is coming for him. It's just a matter of when. And I think back 10 years ago, hard to believe, 10 years. I don't want to sound like that old timer who says, oh, time flies by so fast. But I was just thinking over the New Year's holiday, it had been 10 years since that concussion that he suffered in the outdoor game against Washington, and how we doubted for so long that he would ever get back to some semblance of what he was prior to that. Remember, he was peaking as a player. He was would have been 24 years old at that point. As we know now, looking historically, that's the peak for an offensive hockey player, 24 to 26. And he still was robbed of about a full season in that range. And you wonder what type of ridiculous point total he would have put up in the 2010-11 season. He was halfway to 135 at New Year's. So that was the pace he was on. We haven't seen that type of a scoring pace since Mario Lemieux here in Pittsburgh, and possibly Jágr, I think, one season as well in the mid-90s. I'll still always be regretful that we didn't get a chance to see that season play out to fruition. Malkin even got hurt that year. They were down to Jordan Staal as their top center in the playoffs that season. So for a long time, even after Ray Shero and Dan Bilesma got fired, Hunter, it was looking like maybe Sidney Crosby wouldn't deliver on all that promise. But of course, we all know he's done everything that he can do individually throughout his entire career. And then we saw him collect those 2 Stanley Cups as captain, another Conn Smythe trophy, 2 Conn Smythe trophies, in fact. So at this point, I find myself wondering, am I being selfish asking for just a little bit more here? One more run, one more deep run, maybe if it's not a cup, but to get back to the final, push a little bit more. What do you want to see from the final, however many years it is, of the Crosby era? Let's say he plays till 40, so he has 7 seasons left. What do you think still on the checklist for him?
You know, I remember, I would go back to something I think that you wrote, I think about a year or two ago, just after they had the 3 Stanley Cups. I think you said you want them to beat the Boston Bruins in a playoff series. It's the last rival that they haven't beaten. They've beaten both New York teams. They've beaten Philadelphia. They've beaten Washington, of course. It's Boston, the team that always irks Pittsburgh and their fans. That's the one team that still kind of gets under the Penguins' skin. They haven't beaten them in a playoff series. Yeah, you go back to 2013. It's probably one of the most embarrassing series that I've ever watched, as long as I've been a fan. And, just being able to hopefully beat Tuukka Rask and Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak and Patrice Bergeron, who has played with Sidney Crosby on Team Canada numerous times, that they played on the same line. That's one of the last things I want to see checked off the list. Obviously, the 4th Stanley Cup is the big one. But I think those 2 things, I think that would be it. Just one more big run that includes getting that 4th cup. Him and Gino would tie Gretzky and Messier before, and just beating the Boston Bruins along the way. Well, they would have to go through Boston this year, most likely. This would be a potential year to do it. I think those would be my 2 big things that I want to see checked off. And hopefully he can maybe get to points range, because he's almost at 1,300, maybe 1,500, 1,600 plus points. I think that would be awesome. I mean, I think, like you said earlier, if we were robbed of those concussion years, he'd probably be over 1,400 points right now. And we'd be looking at him being, by the end of his career, 1,700, 1,800 points or something with the way he produces. So if he can get over 1,500, 1,600 with the way he's been producing, and that's very possible, that would be great too. So I guess 3 things.
Yeah, there's still quite a checklist there. And I think it's a testament to how he's preserved himself, preserved his body and his hockey mind to have us feel like all that is reasonable. It can still happen. And, the pressure will be on guys like Brian Burke and Ron Hextall and Mike Sullivan as well to deploy the talent in a proper way. And the pressure's on players like Malkin and Letang, assuming they both stick around, and Tristan Jarry. There are plenty of guys who I think feel that somewhat of a burden, at least, to help Crosby continue to lead this team and to help the team in general continue to succeed under his watch. We're looking at, by the time it's all said and done, it could be a 20-plus year reign for Crosby as the captain of the Penguins, too. So it's going to be one of the best all-time runs in pro sports in North America, around the world. And we're, 13, 14, 15 years into it now. 15 years, actually, at the moment. And it doesn't feel like it's anywhere near its end. So we can all feel blessed in that way. One last question for you, Hunter, before I let you go, and I'll also give you a chance to plug your pod at the end, and also the work you're doing at Pittsburgh Hockey Now. But I just mentioned at the top of the show, the Penguins moving to second place, a tie for second place. There's some teams with games in hand in and around them in the Eastern Division. But at the same time, it's a pretty good illustration of how quickly you can make a move in a tightly compacted group like this one is in the East right now. So, number one, do you still feel like the Penguins are going to make the playoffs? I know you felt like they were going to do that before the season. And number two, where do you think they finish in this big grouping of 8, in which at least 6 of those teams are pretty serious playoff contenders?
Yeah, I still do think they make the playoffs. I know it's been rough a lot of this season, but they're starting to make their move right now. You just mentioned that they've won 4 of their last 5. These last two games especially, you cannot give away points. You can't keep going to overtime. That's just basically a death sentence in this division. They took 4 points. They didn't give the Islanders any, and now you're tied for second place. If I look at, I'm making sure I check the standings right now. So they're in fourth, I guess, because they don't have as many regulation wins as some of the other teams do. But I had them getting second when the season started. I'm going to stick with that. The Capitals have not really impressed me that much this year. They have two lines and one good defenseman, questionable goaltending, and outside of John Carlson, I don't really like their blue line. Philadelphia has been up and down this year. The only, I think, great team in that division is Boston, and I picked them to get first in the division before the season started anyway. But yes, Matt, I do think they make the playoffs. I still think they get second place, and they have the opportunity right in front of them to make their move. They have two more against Washington this week. Then they go back to Long Island. And then the Flyers come to town. So you are playing the three teams that they are tied with right now. So if you win most of those games in regulation, or you win all those games in regulation somehow, you're in a pretty good spot heading into March when you still have 8 games against the Sabres, who are struggling, still against the Devils, 4 more against the Rangers, who haven't played their best hockey. This is the Penguins' opportunity to make their move, and I think we could see that happening over the next couple weeks.
If they can just get through the next 2 weeks, the schedule's tough as nails right now. You just laid it all out. But then there are the Rangers, there are the Sabres. There's so many games against the Devils at the end of this schedule, too. They haven't played the Devils yet this year, and they're going to see them 8 times over the final 4 weeks of the regular season. So if they can plug through February and a little bit of March here, then it might open up for them. And I don't want to give them any kind of opening here. I don't want to raise expectations too high. It is still playing NHL teams, and you do tend to get more up, if you will, for games against the Caps and the Flyers and the Bruins. And well, right now the Islanders, every game is a grind against them. In fact, this is just the Penguins' 3rd regulation win against the Islanders in 10 meetings since Barry Trotz took them over a couple of years back. So it's been difficult to get those 2 points and not give the Islanders a point in the process. But that's key, absolutely key tonight. You know what? The Penguins weren't that good tonight early on, but they got the 2 points in the bank. They gave the Isles nothing. They win the 2-game set. They get 4 points. The Islanders get 0. So the results are as good as they come, and some promising upward trends perhaps for guys like Jarry. We'll see about Letang, just 1 game, but Mike Matheson and, of course, Sidney Crosby on his big 1,000th game night. Sorry that fans couldn't be there. Obviously, that was a shame, but at some point, I'm sure the Penguins will organize some sort of a celebration or a make good as we get a little bit down the line here, and we hope that fans are allowed back into buildings at some point this season, if not the next, certainly. Okay, Hunter, I want to let you plug your pod. Like I said, Locked On Penguins, LO_Penguins on Twitter is where you can find all the links to that, including the show that I did with you just last night. We have a pod exchange or a show exchange this weekend. Hey, why not? I've enjoyed your work over there. And tell folks what you're doing for the Pittsburgh Hockey Now family as well.
Yeah, so I do like stories during most of the games, just like, quick 250, 300 words, such as like, P.O. Joseph with his first goal. Did something the other night regarding the Matheson play, just with how great it was. I mostly do those kind of stories. I also do the Locked On Penguins podcast. Been doing that for a year and a half. It's a ton of fun. I love doing both of these things. You can find me on Twitter at Hunter Hodies, my last name, H-O. Well, you can see it right there, so I don't even know why I'm spelling it. What's nice about the brain fart moment right there. So, but yeah, I enjoy doing it for both platforms, and I can't wait to keep doing it.
Well, thanks to all of you out there for watching. Hunter and I have known each other for 7, 8 years, 9 years. He wrote for me at City of Champions Sports on the Fansided Network way back when, and it's been fun to see you stay in the game here and stay engaged with what is one of the more obviously entertaining teams in all of pro sports, but also one of the more engaged fan bases. That's why it's so much fun to do shows like this, is people care about the Penguins a lot, and I don't take that for granted. I know Hunter doesn't take it for granted. Neither does Dan Kingerski. He has full coverage at Pittsburgh Hockey Now. You'll find this show there as well. I'm about ready to post it as we sign off. And hey, Pens fans, it could be a lot worse. You could be waiting for the game to start or resume, as the Golden Knights and Avalanche are. They're going to start at midnight tonight. That's still a solid 2 hours away. I suppose at least they're out there on the West Coast. They have advantage of the time difference. Next Penguins game coming up as we had just talked about, they'll go back to Washington, or go to Washington for the first time this season, I should say. 2 days off. They'll play on Tuesday and Thursday at Capital One Arena. So keep an eye on this channel for future Pittsburgh postgame shows. I'm sure we'll have a couple for you next week. 4 games in a week for the Pens, 2 at the Caps and 2 at the Islanders to wrap up the month of February. For Hunter Hodies, for Dan Kingerski, for Mike Osti, and the rest of the Pittsburgh Sports Live universe, I'm Matt Gajtka saying good night. God bless. We'll talk to you next time on Pittsburgh Postgame.